For those of una wey dey clap hand for Donald Trump to come Nigeria come fight terrorists or Boko Haram or even bandits wey una dey call them. Now una government, president don dey panic because dem know say if America invade your country, dem no dey come make e no be like dem no dey come with as in come help you for nothing after they spend billions of dollars to come help you fight the fight. At the end of the day, you say you no get anything for return. Na wetin Nigeria government dey try avoid make dem no come. For me, I go say make dem no come. But one other thing wey I need to talk here, if you want make dem no come, then you fight the Boko Haram or the terrorists because na the same government na dem dey sponsor them. If not, there was this as in the issue of Boko Haram, they for not finish for Nigeria for a very long time. Then they sponsor them. That's why you now see and say they finish. They are using it for politics. So make una wise America no they come to your country without they not invite them. I mean at the end of the year after they don't finish everything, they'll come go house empty-handed.
Trump just threatened to invade Nigeria. He didn't go with sanctions. He didn't go with diplomacy. With American troops on the ground in one of Africa's largest countries. The threat came after years of escalating violence against Christians that the Nigerian government has failed to stop. Over 50,000 Christians dead since 2010, more than 7,000 killed in 2025 alone. And now, President Trump is saying enough is enough. Within 12 hours of the threat going public, Nigeria's government fired back. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu rejected Trump's characterization. But the numbers don't lie. The violence is real. The deaths are real. And the question facing Washington is whether Nigeria's failure to protect its Christian population justifies American intervention. Trump's post on Truth Social was blunt. He threatened to send US forces into Nigeria, guns a-blazing, to eliminate Islamic terrorists killing Christians. He ordered the Department of War to prepare for possible action. The target? Groups like Boko Haram and ISWAP that have been slaughtering Christian communities with impunity. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth backed the threat immediately. Either Nigeria protects Christians, or we will eliminate Islamic terrorists who commit atrocities. So what happens now that Trump has made this threat? Could American forces actually invade Nigeria to stop what some are calling a Christian genocide? And why is Trump willing to risk a major confrontation over violence that Nigeria's government has refused to stop for years? To understand why Trump's threat matters, you need to understand the scale of what's been happening to Christians in Nigeria, because the violence isn't some minor border skirmish. It's systematic, it's brutal, and it's been building for over a decade while the world largely ignored it. Since 2010, over 50,000 Christians have been killed in Nigeria by Islamist militant groups including Boko Haram, ISWAP, and Fulani militants. That's not a typo. 50,000 dead. In 2025 alone, more than 7,000 Christians were killed in just 220 days. That's 32 Christians killed every single day for 7 months straight. The attacks follow a horrific pattern. In June 2025, Fulani militants attacked the village of Yelwata, death toll estimates ranging between 100 and 200 people. Witnesses reported civilians burned alive, churches destroyed, women abducted and subjected to sexual violence. This wasn't combat, this was a massacre. And the Nigerian government's response? Largely ineffective. Repeated failures to protect Christian communities or hold perpetrators accountable have turned what started as isolated attacks into a crisis spreading through central and southern regions. Christian villages are being systematically targeted, churches are being burned, and Nigeria's security forces either can't or won't stop it. Trump's argument rests on this brutal reality. He's designated Nigeria, a country of particular concern, for religious persecution, placing it alongside North Korea, Saudi Arabia, Iran, and China. 2 US lawmakers, Representatives Riley Moore and Tom Cole, have been tasked with investigating what some are calling a Christian genocide in Nigeria. Evangelical groups have been lobbying Congress for years to take action. Now they've got the president's EAR, and Trump is responding. Nigeria's President Bola Ahmed Tinubu pushed back against Trump's characterization. The characterization of Nigeria as a religiously intolerant country does not reflect the national reality, Tinubu wrote. He pointed to constitutional protections and religious freedom guarantees. But constitutional protections don't stop machetes. Legal guarantees don't prevent church burnings, and Nigerian Christians watching their communities destroyed aren't comforted by government statements that ignore the reality on the ground. Tinubu claims the violence has deep-rooted social, economic, and ethnic causes, involving clashes between farmers and herders. He's technically correct. Nigeria is roughly divided between a Muslim-majority north and a Christian-majority south. The Fulani aren't technically a terrorist organization. They're pastoralists pushed south by climate change and desertification. But here's what matters. When herders' cattle trample Christian farmers' crops and farmers resist, the response isn't mediation, it's violence. And that violence overwhelmingly targets Christians. When migration routes are blocked, Christian villages burn. The pattern is clear even if the Nigerian government refuses to acknowledge it. Nigeria can frame this as a farmer-herder conflict all at once. That doesn't change the fact that Christian communities are being systematically attacked and the Nigerian government isn't stopping it. So why is Trump threatening to invade? The answer is straightforward. Evangelical voters are a core part of Trump's base. Stories of Christian persecution resonate deeply with them, and they're tired of watching administrations talk about religious freedom while Christians are slaughtered globally. By threatening military action, Trump is signaling that America will no longer stand by while Christian communities face genocide. It's a message that plays well domestically, but it's also raising a fundamental question. Does the United States have a responsibility to protect persecuted Christians when their own governments won't? There's also a strategic calculation at play. The United States is losing Africa, not in some abstract geopolitical sense, losing it literally. Niger expelled US forces in 2025. Chad revoked military cooperation agreements. Multiple African nations have told American troops to leave. Russia and China have been filling the void, offering military aid, building bases, and signing resource extraction deals. Trump's threat to Nigeria represents a dramatic shift. Under the Biden administration, the Pentagon moved toward less direct involvement in Africa. Trump's guns-a-blazing threat signals America is done asking permission. If Nigeria won't protect Christians, America will. But it's a risky gamble. Nigeria isn't Niger or Chad. Nigeria has 223 million people. It has Africa's largest economy, worth over $440 billion. It has a standing military of 143,000 active personnel. And it has regional influence through ECOWAS. A US military intervention in Nigeria would be unlike anything America has attempted in Africa since Somalia in 1993. That ended badly. Black Hawk down. 18 American soldiers killed in a single day in Mogadishu. The US pulled out shortly after. Nigerian officials remember, the foreign ministry's response emphasized sovereignty and constitutional protections. The message to Washington was clear: we're not your client state. Don't treat us like one. But sovereignty doesn't give Nigeria the right to allow Christian genocide on its soil. Trump isn't threatening to support Nigerian forces against Boko Haram. He's threatening to bypass the Nigerian government entirely because that government has proven incapable or unwilling to stop the slaughter. That's an invasion by any definition. Operating on another country's territory without permission is a violation of sovereignty. But it's also a moral calculation. At what point does the international community have a responsibility to intervene when a government fails to protect its citizens? Consider what a US military operation in Nigeria would actually look like. American forces would need to identify and target Boko Haram and ISWAP fighters operating across northern Nigeria. These aren't conventional armies. They're insurgents who blend into civilian populations. If Nigeria refuses to cooperate, American forces would be operating without local intelligence. That means higher risks of civilian casualties, which could inflame the very communities America claims to be protecting. And that's assuming the operation stays limited. Trump said the attack would be fast, vicious, and sweet, but counterinsurgency operations are never fast. The US spent 20 years in Afghanistan. Boko Haram has been active since 2002. These aren't groups you eliminate in a quick strike. The ripple effects would extend far beyond Nigeria. If the US invades Nigeria over religious persecution claims, it sets a precedent. Several African nations have Christian minorities facing violence. Would they be next? It's a question that terrifies some governments, but for persecuted Christians, it might be a lifeline. There's also the question of USAID. Trump threatened to immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria. In 2024, the US provided approximately $1.1 billion in assistance to Nigeria. Cutting that aid would hurt health programs and development, but it might also pressure Nigeria's government to finally take Christian protection seriously. Nigerian civil society leaders have been calling for international attention for years. Some want support and resources. Others are desperate enough to welcome any intervention that stops the killing. Years of attacks with minimal government response have left Christian communities feeling abandoned. Trump's threat has problems, though. Yes, Christians are being killed. But framing this purely as Islamic terrorism versus Christians oversimplifies the conflict. Muslims are also victims of Boko Haram and ISWAP. These groups target anyone who doesn't submit to their extremist ideology. The farmer-herder conflicts kill people on both sides. The violence follows resource competition as much as religious hatred. But from the perspective of Christian communities watching their churches burn, these distinctions don't matter much. They're being attacked. Their government isn't stopping it. And now America might. This matters because Trump's framing could make the situation worse. If the US frames its intervention as protecting Christians from Muslims, it risks turning localized conflicts into a broader religious war. It gives Boko Haram and ISWAP exactly what they want, proof that the West is attacking Islam. That narrative helps recruitment. But the counter-argument is simple. What's the alternative? Continue watching Christian communities slaughtered while doing nothing because intervention might be complicated. Nigerian security forces have been fighting these groups for over a decade with mixed results. There have been some successes, but clearly not enough. Christian communities continue dying, and Trump's calculation is that support hasn't worked. Maybe direct action will. Why the threat now? Part of it is Trump's personal style. He prefers dramatic threats and maximum pressure. But the timing matters. Trump is facing pressure from his evangelical base to do something dramatic on Christian persecution. Threatening military action checks that box. It generates headlines. It shows he's willing to act. Whether it actually helps Christians in Nigeria is the real question. Some welcome any attention to their suffering, but others worry that American military intervention would make them targets. Being seen as aligned with a foreign power could provoke retaliation. This puts Trump in a difficult position. If he backs down, he looks weak to his base. If he follows through, he risks a diplomatic crisis and potential military quagmire. If he cuts aid without military action, he punishes Nigerian Christians along with their government. The practical question remains, how exactly would US forces eliminate Boko Haram and ISWAP? These groups operate across borders. Eliminating them from Nigeria just pushes them elsewhere. Counterinsurgency experts know this. It's called the whack-a-mole problem. Those root causes include poverty, corruption, lack of economic opportunity, and weak governance. Northern Nigeria has some of the highest poverty rates in the world. These conditions create recruitment pools for extremist groups. Military action doesn't fix that. Development and governance reform do, but those take time, and Christians are dying now. Trump's threat treats a multi-decade crisis as something American military force can solve quickly. It's the same thinking that got the US into extended wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, but for Trump's evangelical base, doing something feels better than doing nothing. The Nigerian government is now in crisis management mode. Behind the scenes, Nigerian diplomats are working channels in Washington to find off-ramps, but Trump's public threat makes that harder. He's committed himself. Walking it back looks like weakness. What happens next depends on several factors. Does Trump follow through with aid cuts? Does he increase sanctions on Nigerian officials? Or does he actually order military preparation? The Department of War hasn't commented publicly beyond Hegseth's initial statement. That silence is notable. Military leaders understand the risks. They know the lessons of Somalia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. They know fast, vicious, and sweet isn't how counterinsurgency works. African reaction has been sharp. Social media across the continent lit up with criticism. Many see this as American imperialism. But for some persecuted Christian communities, it's the first time a major power has threatened real action on their behalf. Russia and China are watching carefully. Trump's threat plays into their narrative that America doesn't respect sovereignty. They can offer partnership without military threats, but they also don't intervene to stop religious persecution.